Welcome to the story behind the story. I'm your host, Brian Smith. Today's episode is unlike any other because somehow, through the miracle of imagination, time, and maybe just a touch of providence, we've brought back none other than the 16th President of the United States. Yes, you heard that right. President Abraham Lincoln. So sit back, open your mind, and listen carefully as I travel through time to talk to a man who led a divided nation through its darkest hours, yet never lost his humor, humility, or heart. This is the Lincoln Podcast. Mr. President, or should I say Abe, welcome to the story behind the story. Mr. Smith, I want to thank you kindly. You may call me Mr. Lincoln. I was never one to insist on titles, but Abe sounds rather informal for such a solemn occasion, though I've been called worse in my day. Fair enough, Mr. Lincoln. You look remarkably well for someone who's been, gone for over 150 years. I've been resting quite a spell, though I reckon it's a peculiar thing to return and find the world moving faster than a telegraph wire on fire. That's for sure. There's a lot to catch up on, but let's start at the beginning. You were born in a log cabin in Kentucky, 1809. Tell me what life was like for a young Abraham Lincoln. Well, sir, it was a humble beginning. I was born amidst the trees and the clay of Hardin County. My father was a farmer, my mother a saint. We had little in the way of money, but much in the way of love and labor. I split rails to fence the land, borrowed books when I could find them, and read by the light of the fire when others slept. You taught yourself nearly everything, didn't you? Aye. My schooling was short, maybe a total of a year. But I found that learning did not require a fine schoolhouse, only a willing mind. I read the Bible, Shakespeare, Aesop's fables, and law books until I could argue with a stump if it had ears. And eventually you did argue with judges, lawmakers, and even generals. But before we get there, tell me, what drove you into politics? In truth, I was driven by a desire to make something better of myself, and perhaps something better of this nation. When I first entered the Illinois legislature, I had no grand design. I simply wanted to be useful. Later, as the issue of slavery grew darker over the land, I felt compelled to act. You once said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." That line still echoes through history. And sadly, Mr. Smith, it still holds truth. I spoke those words in 1858, knowing they would stir up a storm, but I meant them. A nation that tolerates injustice in one corner cannot expect peace in another. And that conviction led you to the presidency. What was it like being thrust into leadership at such a dangerous time? It was like steering a ship through a hurricane while half the crew was trying to mutiny. I never sought war, but once it came, I could not shrink from it. I often felt, as I wrote, I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. That humility, that faith, seems rare today. You carried a heavy burden. Did you ever doubt your choices? Every day. But doubt, when honestly met, can sharpen a man's purpose. I doubted, but I never despaired. I knew that the Union, though battered, was worth saving. And freedom, true freedom, was worth every drop of courage we could muster. Your Emancipation Proclamation changed the course of history. When you signed it, did you realize its magnitude? I knew it would alter our course. Whether it would save my own reputation or ruin it, I did not know. But I believed that if slavery was not wrong, nothing was wrong. And I decided that, come what may, I must act on that belief. That decision still defines you today. But if I may, tell me about Mary. How did she handle the weight of the White House and the war? Mary was complicated, as all good souls are. She loved fiercely, worried constantly, and never ceased to remind me that even presidents must be husbands. We suffered much loss together, especially of our children, but she had a heart full of devotion, even when sorrow clouded her mind. You led through heartbreak and chaos, yet somehow you kept your sense of humor. Humor, sir, was my refuge. I found that laughter, even in the darkest hour, was a form of courage. A good story could mend a weary heart better than most medicine. That's timeless advice, Mr. Lincoln. Now, if you were alive today in 2025, you'd find a nation once again divided. Politics feels poisonous. Truth feels negotiable. What would you say to Americans today? I would say this: do not mistake loudness for strength, nor anger for conviction. The great task before you is not to outshout one another, but to understand one another. I once said, with malice toward none, with charity for all. That was not just for my time, it is for all time. Your nation will endure, not because you all agree, but because you refuse to give up on the idea that all men and women are created equal. That sounds like wisdom the world could use right now. Then I pray it finds a home in your hearts. As the candles burn low and the echoes of history fade, I can't help but feel humbled. We often think of Abraham Lincoln as a monument carved in stone. But today, he felt human again, wise, weary, and endlessly hopeful. And that's the story behind the story of my conversation with President Abraham Lincoln. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. The echoes of the past are waiting to be heard. My name is Brian Smith, and we are history.